So for the past several months, Linda and I have really begun to take a disciplined approach to asking very specific questions when we're engaging our clients or whether we're working in a coaching environment. And we have found that there are these 5 questions that we keep returning to over and over again, not just because they're effective, but because the people that we're working with, they kind of know that these questions are coming and they know that they're the same ones over and over again. But when you zoom back and we really ask ourselves, why are these questions working? I think there are 3 things that kind of pop up. And number 1 is we're intentionally trying to deepen the relationship through questions. And we're also trying to build trust, whether we're facilitating someone, helping someone build something, or coaching them. That trust needs to be built, and by returning to the same questions, that also happens. And we really want to engage our people with purpose, and to ask these 5 questions. We're getting close by asking questions about family, and we're also getting pretty broad by asking about their observations of organizations. So
sometimes when we rely on good questions to unlock our thinking about how we're going to build a relationship, or how we're going to take a certain angle with the people that we are supervising, managing, working with, coaching, parenting, all of the things. Sometimes we just look for that perfect question to unlock thinking. And what I think that Brian and I have learned in the process of trying to hone some of the questions that we have gathered and applied and used and tried out and morphed a bit, one of the things that we're learning is what to do with the answers that we are hearing. And sometimes the answers that people share with us allow us to follow rabbit trails, allow us to unearth what really is important to the people that we are connecting with.
So these 5 questions have been really effective, and today we just want to share a little bit about what they are and why they become so effective for us. And hopefully, you can take these with you and share them with the people that you're working with.
Welcome to the Leadership Vision Podcast, sharing our expertise in the discovery, practice, and implementation of a strengths-based approach to people, teams, and culture. For more resources about developing your strengths, the strengths of your team, or the strengths of your entire organization, click the link in the show notes or visit us on the web at leadershipvisionconsulting.com. Brian and Linda, hello.
Hello.
Hey, Nate.
And you are in
I'm in the new office space.
Did you move?
Yes. Those of you who are watching this on our YouTube channel, by the way, we have a YouTube channel. Go check it out in the show notes. Yeah, this is my new office. 14 months in the making. It was supposed to take 3. We won't get into all of those details because I'm sure you might have a lot of questions to ask me about it. We just don't have time for it, because today we're going to be talking about the 5 questions that Leadership Vision uses to frame a constructive conversation and build awareness and relational rapport. A couple weeks ago, Brian, Linda, I don't know if you remember because so much has happened since then. Linda, you shared with us this report, this CEO report that talked about how building relationships is everything, which seems obvious and like a duh sort of a thing to even say out loud, but it's so important in this virtual, post-COVID, whatever kind of this time in history we're living through. It is so incredibly important that they listed it on this report as the number 1 thing. It's kind of great for us, right? That's sort of Leadership Vision's specialty. And today I'm really looking forward to unpacking these questions with you, because they're pretty simple. They're not exactly, Linda's making quotes, rocket science types of things, but I think everyone will just get a huge benefit from them. Brian, one of the things I'm even lifetime thinking about is when I first met you, this was back circa mid-2007.
Circa.
Wow.
Circa. You like that? That's a
I do like
$5
that.
word. This is before Linda, so there was no Brian and Dr. Linda Schubring. It was just Brian Schubring. We were working together, and you were talking about how you would take your daughter to Caribou every day after school.
Oh, this is going to be good. Yes, that's true.
And you would ask her, I'm blanking on the exact question, but it was something like, what do you see? Mm-hmm. As she was ordering, you would essentially ask her these questions to presumably build relational rapport and also kind of influence her, just her ability to ask and observe. And I have 4 children of my own now. This is 6-7 years after that my first child was born, and I still use some of these questions, different versions of these questions, when I'm reading a book to them. Like kids' books these days, there might be like no words on a page, and I'll just say, what do you guys see? And it's so interesting because not only am I deepening that time with them, but it's also a way to just like, I'm not going to feed you like, hey, where's the duck? Because then they're like, the duck is there, versus like, well, what do you see? And they might say a duck, or sometimes they'll pick something I hadn't even thought of. So first of all, thank you for that little parenting nugget. And
You're
not
welcome.
to dumb this, not to dumb this way down, but I wonder if part of unlocking this mystery of building relational rapport is asking more open-ended questions to the folks on our teams and actually sitting and listening to what they have to say.
Yes, that is what we're going to talk about today. And I did not make that connection that you made between myself and my daughter and how it is that I was raising her. But that is a really keen insight, Nathan.
Tell me a little bit about the history of these questions, maybe how they've been evolved. We'll get to the questions, the specific questions in a second here. But like where I'm hoping this goes is as team leaders are listening to this and they're thinking, how do I get to know the people on my team? Do I have to print off a list of the top 20 icebreaker questions and figure out what everyone's favorite color is, an animal, and where they want to go on vacation, blah, blah, blah. So I'm wondering if you can kind of tell me where these came from and then maybe briefly talk about how you've used these, time and time again for, I don't even know how long this has kind of been part of our formal, informal way that we guide teams.
The history of these questions, they have been evolving over time. But I think that the reason why the questions were evolving is because Linda and I have been reminding ourselves over and over again that no matter what it is that we're doing, whether we're consulting, coaching, building teams, whatever it is, we have to be very intentional on keeping the attention on the individual and focusing really on where they're at and where they're coming from, and not letting our content or our curriculum or our process guide us all the time. We have to start with some anchoring position, if you will, with that individual. And so we always use questions, but our idea was, let's make them specific. Let's make them repetitious, because we know that people like specificity, they like repetition, they like to know what's coming, and they also like the familiarity that comes with these 5 questions. So it's a history that's been long yet short, but the practice has been intentional, and we're finding that these questions work, and we know that by sharing them, people can also use these to build relationships too.
Why don't we get to these questions then? How are you? That's the warm-up question, as I like to say. That's, friends, family, relational, professional, fitness, what are you noticing? Who are you observing? What are you learning? And number 5, what concerns you? Before you kind of dive into these, what I find fascinating about these is that, that can apply to children, that can apply to your senior VPs on the team, that can apply to everyone in between. And again, the focus on this conversation is how do we listen for the answers and what do we do with those? So the warm-up question, Brian and Linda, the 3 F's, family, friends, and fitness. Why is that necessary? Why do we start there? What's the importance of that one?
So the question, how are you, is actually a question that we really want the answer to. Oftentimes, how are you is a question of like, how are you? And you're supposed to say fine.
Great.
And keep walking. Great. Well, I'm doing well. Or terrible. And you're like, oh, that's too bad. But this one is really inviting people to check in with themselves. Oh, I don't know. How really am I? I had my coffee this morning. I guess I'm fine. And most people, if they have a sunny disposition, they're always doing great. But it starts to... the question, how are you, starts to frame the conversation about them. It's getting them into their body and beginning to think about connecting their mind and their behaviors.
Because there's so much happening around an individual that they're really not paying attention to. And instead of saying, how are you? Then they say, hey, I'm doing great. And then instead of saying, how are you really doing? Then we have like 3 different drop downs, and these 3 different drop downs, we want to ask questions, or we will ask questions about their family. If they have a spouse or a partner, if they have kids, or maybe if they have parents living with them. We talk about family, we talk about friends, and their friends are relational friends, professional friends, maybe friends at the gym or something. And then also fitness, and fitness is about your rest, your diet. Are you moving? Like, how are you really paying attention to your well-being? Because this question can be much like a fitness wearable device, Nathan. Maybe you have one of those where, like, if you tap into your phone, your phone's going to tell you all the things that your wearable is telling you about yourself, that you're like, oh, I wasn't aware of that until that device reflected it back to you. This question about how are you functions in much the same way, is to ask someone to really like step back, pay attention to really what they are aware of, but maybe not connecting that to how they are feeling right now. And that's the reason why this question is so important.
What do you do with the answers? Because I know we're like, so I was at Trader Joe's yesterday, checkout guy, hey, how you doing? Not so good. It's like, okay.
He was honest.
Sorry. I'm not really going to follow up with that. But like on a team, you can't just sort of brush off someone's potential, like when someone's, like, when you ask this question, is this more in a one-on-one setting? Are you asking to do this a large group in a room, have people write it down? Because I wonder if, this type of question, like sometimes we're just not prepared for those, oh man, family's rough, my friends are rough, I haven't worked out or eaten healthily or slept well in weeks.
Yeah, well, the reason why we ask the question is to demonstrate that we really care.
Because we do.
That we started to realize,
you have to follow up then.
Yeah, that we would, Brian and I would debrief our conversations that we had through the day, and just maybe even how we felt during them or the things that we learned. And we started to realize, like, we really care about the people that we meet with and our clients and our team members. And so when we're asking the question, how are you? What do we do with the answers? We start to see patterns. We start to try to hone in on what is really going on. We don't try to, care for them or like fix their problems if it's bad, or we don't try to like be an overly cheerleader if things are going great. It's more of, okay, we're just reading the wearable data to see like how you are doing. Once again, the answers begin to frame what the rest of the conversation will look like.
And obviously, if you're with a small group, maybe the question is how you're doing. It just involves their family. And there are some teams we're working with where you'll get deeper into some of the other relationships and how they're doing physically, because they're ready and they have that kind of rapport and trust with each other. We're just mindful of what the environment or what the relationship presents us. But if you do this with consistency, you can see someone, increasing or bettering their overall well-being. And you can also see the opposite, when you can notice someone that's maybe cycling downward. And because we have this question and these drop downs, and because of the awareness, we can notice both of those trends and comment on those or follow those and just ask for some more insight.
In the webinar you did with Melissa Gill from Onsite Solutions Physical Therapy, PT, she was talking about getting people to notice certain like physical, what she call them, like whispers, and like to pay attention to that. So for us on the flip side, it's kind of the same thing. Like as you notice patterns, as you realize, things are going on, as a leader, you can perhaps help people not solve those things, but maybe just bring awareness to to those different things. So
that's a good transition, Nathan, into question number 2.
Yeah. What are you noticing?
What are you noticing? This question is intentional to help people move from the how are you question to zooming back out and to actually look around, like metaphorically, what are you noticing within the organization? What are you noticing within the environment? And kind of getting them to have that bird's eye view. Just zoom back. What are you noticing? And that's really the intention of this question, is to kind of zoom back, take a deep breath from that personal dialogue that we're just in. Like, hey, now let's just look around. What are you seeing?
And that helps us understand their perspective. And their perspective might be just that one person that's driving them nuts.
That's
or it could be,
I noticed Joe won't stop talking.
Yes. Or they're starting to see the dots that are going to line up to build towards this preferred future, or it's across the board. It is a perspective gathering question to say, what are you noticing?
And one of the things that Linda and I are paying attention to is when they do zoom out, at what altitude did they stop? Because sometimes when you ask them to like look at the environment around them, they can maybe only see things at a 10-foot level because there's a pressing deadline, there's an end of a quarter pressure, there could be some tension on their teams. And by them zooming back, they can only zoom back on just their team. Others, they may have a sense of freedom, a sense of enlightenment or positivity, and they can just see all around, notice all kinds of stuff. And just by their response, we can kind of tell like maybe where their excitement is or where their anxiety is.
Yeah. So question 2, what are you noticing? Question 3, who are you observing? What's the difference between these two questions? Because they seem very similar to me.
Yeah, you start because I'll finish.
Oh, all right. Who are you observing? This one is very important for me personally because I really believe that people often mistake the organization with a person. And so what I want to do is I kind of wanted to separate those two specifically and ask someone to pay attention to the whom. Who are they noticing? It could be someone that's on their team that they're growing and that they're investing in. It could be someone that's making decisions that's affecting them. And you can hear a lot about the quality of relationships, relational trust, stability or instability in the interpersonal side of an organization by asking the who question and separating that from the organizational question.
And some of these questions have evolved from an adaptive leadership model of applying leadership principles. Now, Ron Heifetz, who founded the Adaptive Leadership Network and has written many books about adaptive leadership, one of the things that he says is leadership is an improvisational dance from the balcony to the dance floor. And in questions 2 and 3, what are you noticing is a balcony zooming out kind of question, and who are you observing? Question 3 is a zoomed in on the dance floor. Who are you partnering with? Who are you swinging around? At Leadership Vision, we use the word zoom in, zoom out instead of balcony and dance floor, but it's some similar principles so that we understand what are they noticing from a bird's eye view, and then what are they noticing as they begin to rub shoulders with, meet with, walk by, interact, I am, whatever. Hearing that really begins to help us understand their perspective in a different way.
And by going to this, who are you observing, that also tends to reveal some more of the emotional pressure points than the organizational question. And we also want to be able to use these questions as a way to investigate how someone's feeling emotionally.
So then the 4th question, what are you learning? So you could be learning about someone's emotions. You could be learning about, how that maybe fits into the larger organization. The what are you learning question, I feel, is like a good one for organizations that wanting to tap into innovation and creativity and all of those things. But how are we using this question here?
Well, what we're doing with this question, what are you learning, is we're focusing it on the individual. What are you learning? And so, it could be, what are they learning about themselves? What are they learning about their team? What are they learning about their organization? It could be something practical and tactical. It could be a new application or some new way that they're onboarding someone. We have no idea, but what we want to point to is that when it comes to the learning style of someone, that can help inform us on how they're doing. It could be a level of excitement that's increasing because they're learning something, or the opposite, they're frustrated because they have to learn something new, and that's not what's going on. And it can also give us some indication as to what's going on within the organization, that people are being asked to step up. They're learning about a new product line, a new business strategy. There could be some lag time around that individual because they're learning into something very specific.
And I love how open-ended it is, because when we say, what are you learning? It isn't, what are they learning from us necessarily?
It's open-ended.
It's so open-ended. And what we find when we're working with lifelong learners and people that love to grow and will never arrive and are always adding to their skills and into their toolkit, one of the things that we learn is that learners love to teach. And so sometimes when I say, what are you learning? People will use that as an opportunity to tell me about a book that they read or a podcast that they listened to as they were getting ready for work, or something else that they wanted to share with me that allows them to really learn in a different way. Because we know the best way you learn is to teach. And so to even be talking about the things that you're learning only deepens their comprehension, their understanding, their opportunity to turn those learnings into wisdom.
If you ask this question, be prepared to be surprised at the person's answer, because they could be learning about their spouse and packing up boxes because they're moving, or they could be learning something about their kids, or they could be learning something about ballet because their daughter's in ballet now.
Or fixing their air conditioning.
Yep. You have no idea. It's always fun with this one.
Yeah.
Right. Decorating an office, for example.
There you go.
The last question, number 5, what concerns you, feels like to me a brilliant question for managers and leaders and bosses, in quotes, whoever, to ask, because it allows space, a safe space for perhaps for people to bring up, issues of conflict, or, hey, I was thinking, the direction that the company is heading, or why did you make this decision, or why did they, it just allows room to do that. Is that what you find with this question? Is that an often, like, people are just like, oh yeah, finally I have a place to make my voice heard?
It's an interesting way of putting it, Nathan, because sometimes the people that we're talking to, or the team that we're talking to, they want to start with this question. And this question's last. It's last for a reason, because we want someone to be able to talk about a lot of things before they get to really what concerns them. Because I have found, I'm sure that Linda's found the same thing, that the concern that someone comes to the meeting with or comes to the coaching session with is really not the concern that's really bugging them. That the true concern is embedded somewhere else, and that other concern is just the distraction. What we're trying to do is like pull back the curtains. We're trying to have them like unfold the origami and then all of a sudden they may be like, I had no idea it was that really concerns me. That's why we have to be patient with this, because this may be, like what Linda said, we may have to adapt our entire plan for the session or for the team building that we're doing just based on the answer to this one question, because that's the concern, and that's the immediate concern that they have in this moment.
And you never know what they're going to answer. Yes, we do see patterns. We do see trends. We do see variations on a theme. But really, the concerns could be, as they're having this whole conversation with us, all of a sudden there's a sense of, I'm concerned we're not adapting fast enough. Mm-hmm. But if you started with that question, you'd be like, no, I don't have any concerns. As you start to really connect to the things that you are noticing, observing, the people that you're interacting with, how you are really doing this, what concerns you, starts to help you see, okay, these are the things that I'm losing sleep over or keep me up at night. And these are the things I wake up thinking about. And maybe I don't need to. Or there's other ways to think about it. Or who do I need to partner with so that they don't weigh on me in the same way?
What we really are trying to get at, Nathan, is something strategic. We want to help the people that we're working with separate what's a distraction and what's really a concern. Because a distraction could be just something that's noise. It could be just a buzz in the background. It's just a distraction, but it's not really what's concerning you. And the concern is perhaps giving them some anxiety, which is creating tunnel vision, which means they could be irritable and making quick decisions too quickly. And that's going to affect a lot of things. The distraction, not so much, but this is the concern. And we really want to get there. I think that people then, like once they realize what's really at the heart of it all, they want to talk about that.
So in these 5 questions, the answers, and as they are listening to themselves answer the question, they have finally said out loud into the universe what maybe they've been wanting to say for a while, or they hadn't had space, or they hadn't created space to be able to say those specific things. What we find is when they're able to talk one-to-one with us, when they go into their team, they have a refined way that they're articulating these things without making it personal, without, pointing fingers or blaming or shaming. Instead, they are saying, as I took stock, as I started to answer some of these questions, these are some of the things that I'm thinking about. And for us, we start to notice patterns and trends on teams.
Yeah, that's an important piece, because here in this question number 5, just some context for our listeners. There are many teams that we're working with where we will talk about their concerns around a specific topic. And then that same month, we're coaching the team members on that topic. But then when the team members answer this question, what concerns you, it can be very different than what the team identified. So we want to be able to put those two things in the balance, what the team is concerned about and what the individual is concerned about. Because oftentimes, Nathan, as you know, working with teams, some people just won't speak up.
Right. I'm wondering if we can zoom out or zoom back or zoom up or whatever.
Lean back,
if you will. I can do that now that I have all this space. So what I'm noticing, let me ask you a bunch of semi-rhetorical questions before you answer. So what I'm noticing is that this seems like this could be an entire 2 to 8 hour day of training. When I'm learning about this, as if I'm the team leader, I have to be completely ready. There's really no playbook outside of these 5 questions. I have to be completely ready to take the conversation wherever that may go. And so what concerns me is that somebody could derail this conversation pretty quickly. A bad apple, if you will, or an issue that perhaps you didn't know was there. So my question with all of this is, how are you using this? And this might be a second podcast, I don't know. Is this a full schedule of training? Is this you're using a little bit at the beginning of a different training, the beginning of a staff meeting? I'm curious, the context at which you ask all these questions.
Sometimes it feels almost like a warm-up or an icebreaker.
Okay.
And it could be 5 minutes. Or each person has 2 minutes to answer the 5 questions, and you just, pop through it. Brian and I have been using this and trying to hone these questions in the context of a one-to-one conversation. So they're with us. Sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's consulting, sometimes it is preparation for facilitating. When we do facilitate with a larger group, it's basic classroom management. Okay,
is,
just
right?
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Truly.
Or could we turn that into a statement and not a story?
Right.
So there's a lot of ways that we use this. And I think what Brian and I are saying today is these are questions you can use in one-to-one conversations, but try it in the context of a team.
Yeah.
In a one-to-one conversation or in a coaching session, Linda and I can use this 5-question outline and kind of move through those within a 10 to 20 minute period of time. And this is of a 60 or 90 minute session, but we're giving a time to have conversation about each of these. And in a team setting, Linda is usually the one that drives this part of the opening of a team engagement session. And she can use one of these questions with the team, and it is truly a 3 to 5 minute conversation that Linda's using a question to just get the group talking. But it's intentional. It's happening every single time, and the group knows this is how we're going to start. And Linda has a great way of moving the team into this dialogue effectively.
And you don't have to use all 5 every single time.
Nope.
Right.
So there's times where we will pick and choose. There's times that, depending on who we're talking to, it might sound a little bit different what we're asking them.
Sure.
So,
well, what I like about this is how diverse it is, how adaptable it can be. A leader could use these questions as part of an entire series or an entire, day's worth of training to just kind of get to know people, get to know their heartbeat. What are they thinking and feeling about this organization? As you said, it could be in the one-to-one conversation, that context of a daily meeting or whatever. And the picking and choosing, and also the adapting them to different versions of these questions to suit the personality. I feel like this is one of those really helpful tools that is pretty simple when you think about like what we're doing, but also kind of profound as well. So any final thoughts, any, I don't know, last tidbits of wisdom or anything else before we leave?
One closing thought for me is just to encourage people to try the questions and to do this practice consistently. Because what we have found is that the more consistent you are with asking these questions, the more the person you're interacting with is going to be flowing with what you're doing, and they kind of answer more freely, and they're almost excited to get to the next question because they know what you're going to ask.
And I would say practice and try it out. Try all of the questions, pick one of the questions. I have a dear friend who defines team as a place where relationships happen. And we have found that, I love it. And we have found that when these relationships are happening, they're deepened when you're asking specific questions that you actually want to know the answer to, so that you can build the trust and you can deepen and sometimes broaden relationships.
Well, Brian and Linda, thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing this, and I know that we'll be answering these questions in our next staff meeting. So thank you. And thank you for listening and watching to the Leadership Vision podcast, sharing our expertise in the discovery, practice, and implementation of a strengths-based approach to people, teams, and culture. For more resources about developing your strengths, the strengths of your team, or the strengths of your entire organization, click the link in the show notes or visit us on the web at leadershipvisionconsulting.com. And if you found value from this podcast or any of our other resources, we would appreciate it if you would share it with a friend, leave us a review on iTunes, or just reach out to us, because we would love to hear how you're using these things and how we might be able to help you. I'm Nathan Freeberg.
I'm Linda Schubring.
And I'm Brian Schubring.
And on behalf of our entire team, thanks for listening. Hey everybody, real quick, it's Nathan here from Leadership Vision. Before you go, we have a couple of new free resources on our website. One of them is an insight guide for individuals. It will give you a couple of our kind of greatest learnings over the past 20 plus years of working with strengths, and then some also individual insight. And then the second one is a team discussion guide, and it can help you kind of broaden the breadth and depth of knowledge of your team and understand who's on your team. So click the link in the show notes, or you can click the link below here if you're watching this on YouTube. Download these, and then we would love to hear back from you. How did it go? Did you like it? Would you not like so much? Whatever it is. Thanks for watching.